The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the David Pakman Show. If you haven't heard of Ben Carson, he's an American neurosurgeon. He is the director of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins Hospital, and he is also a Republican. He is a conservative. He is anti-gay by any stretch of the imagination, and he came to fame after delivering a widely publicized speech at the February 2013 National Prayer Breakfast. And he talked about the government's role in healthcare, and he had a number of other things to say. And he made a mistake in my mind. He made the mistake of speaking his mind about his frank and honest views about homosexuality. He went on the Sean Hannity show, and he talked about, well, I kind of consider that if you're advocating for marriage equality, you're kind of like someone advocating for pedophilia or bestiality. That's what he had to say. It hasn't been received particularly well. Sean Hannity's getting blamed for it. But before we get into all that, Lewis, let's just first look at what his original comments were on the Sean Hannity show. Here we go.
The Supreme Court dealing with two issues involving gay marriage. I've asked you a lot of questions.
For some reason, we only have white. We have the audio, but we don't have the video. That's interesting, Lewis. Let's see if we can get the whole thing. I think we'd be much better off with that, don't you think?
Well, if we're just stuck with the audio.
If we're just stuck with the audio, we're just stuck with the audio.
Yeah.
But we'll do what we can to get the video. Something about that Media Matters website, Lewis. I don't know. Browsers seem to not really like it.
Oh, well.
Disappointing, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we don't have the video. We will get the audio for you. And again, this is Ben Carson on the Sean Hannity program, making that age-old comparison that really only people who are anti-gay like to make, and it's not based in any kind of science or evidence, which is that people who are gay might be pedophiles. And if you support other people being gay, whatever that means, that's also kind of like being a pedophile. So here it is, Ben Carson. Let's take a listen to what he had to say. We're having some kind of technical difficulties here, but here we go.
Last question. We have the issue of the Supreme Court dealing with two issues involving gay marriage. I've asked you a lot of questions. I've never asked you that. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are that marriage is between a man and a woman. It's a well-established, fundamental pillar of society. And no group, be they gays, be they NAMBLA, be they people who believe in bestiality, it doesn't matter what they are, they don't get to change the definition. So,
right. So there it is. Where do you even come up with bringing that in? Like, Natan, wasn't that totally optional? There was nothing there. He wasn't in any way tricked into making the comparison. Completely unprovoked, he says, anybody trying to make it okay for two men to get married, that would be like NAMBLA, a group which, the Man-Boy Love Association, a known pedophile group, or somebody who does bestiality. It would be like them trying to redefine marriage. He wasn't pushed into that in any way.
Yeah, he's trying to slur it by association. And, most people, fortunately, don't believe this, don't believe there's any connection between the two. But it's either NAMBLA, pedophilia, or in some cases, the idea that allowing gay marriage will lead to, legal polygamy and other things of that sort. Right.
If anything, it would be letting the Mormon church run without any kind of oversight that would have led to continued polygamy. It's funny because so many of these accusations that are being pushed onto so-called secularists or progressivists, really we should be looking at a lot of the religious groups. That being said, let's now take a listen to the subsequent apology that took place on the Sean Hannity show that he read and a bunch of other stuff.
Nobody should have the ability to change the historical definition of marriage. That to me, this issue is only a side issue. The big issue, even before this, is if you're African American and you're conservative, you are vilified. You are demonized. You are called names. You are attacked. That is the ongoing epidemic that goes on. There's no freedom of speech for African American conservatives in America.
No, that's not
yes,
true.
It is.
Sean Hannity, you created a monster. Ben Carson, you're a doctor. You're not a politician. This man,
and you're a
Senator
lawyer.
Rob
You're not
Portman
a talk show
and Vice President Dick Cheney, Ben Carson thinks your children are social deviants. This guy is a monster because you created
That's not what he
said. So Leo Terrell is accusing Sean Hannity of having created a monster by giving him a question saying, listen, the guy's a doctor. He's not a politician. You're asking him these questions. I totally disagree with this. If Ben Carson didn't want to answer that, he could have said, I'm a doctor and I speak about healthcare. And if politics happens to correlate with that, if it's a question about Obamacare, I'll answer it. But what I think about gay marriage is completely irrelevant. I completely disagree with the progressive argument there. In any case, that Sean Hannity did anything wrong here.
No, you can't put any of the blame on Hannity. I mean, you could argue that having him on the program doesn't make sense.
Right.
But yeah, silly argument.
Absolutely. Pat Robertson, the latest from Pat Robertson. Pat Robertson was asked one of these questions. We always hear these questions. We don't know if they're real. We don't know if they're fake. People email into Pat Robertson. Who in their right mind would ask Pat Robertson for any kind of honest advice? I don't really know. The latest one from Pat Robertson is to answer why we always hear about all these miracles happening in Africa. I didn't know that we did hear that, but I guess if you believe the premise, Pat Robertson says, well, God gives fewer miracles to the too educated Americans who learn stuff like science. I'm not kidding. This is really Pat Robertson's argument here. Take a look at this.
I do amazing miracles, like people being raised from the dead, blind eyes opened, lame people walking, happen with great frequency in places like Africa and not here in the United States. What can we do to encourage those things to happen here? Is America too far gone for miracles like this?
Those people overseas didn't go to Ivy League schools.
Not quite that simple.
Well, we're so sophisticated. We think we've got everything figured out. We know about evolution. We know about Darwin. We know about all these things that says God isn't real. We know about all this stuff. And if we've been in many schools, the more advanced schools, we have been inundated with skepticism and secularism. And overseas, they're simple, humble. You tell them God loves them, and they say, okay, he loves me. And you say God will do miracles, and they say, okay, we believe him.
So this is just shocking on so many levels. Number one, Pat Robertson is basically saying, right, that God only does miracles for those uneducated Africans. That's level number one, which is he's kind of being insulting in a way, right? That's level one. But level two is he's kind of making a good point when he talks about Ivy League schools, which is the more educated you are, the less likely you're to fall for this kind of evangelical, televangelist style nonsense that Pat Robertson and his friends are responsible for. So in that sense, he kind of is making a good point.
Right. I mean, you are more likely to believe something that happens by pure coincidence or chance is a miracle,
right,
if you're completely blind to everything that's going on around you.
Yeah, the more educated you are, the less nonsense you're going to accept. The more education you have, the less likely you are to send money to Pat Robertson. That's really what he's saying. Now, I actually, we should tell the audience, we've been trying to get a bogus question on the 700 Club just to see if these are made up questions, if they're real questions, if they have screening. We don't really know. So we've been submitting a number of questions written supposedly by Diego Kesterbaum to the 700 Club. I don't even know what channel it's on, so I have no way of monitoring whether any questions get through, but I invite our audience to submit your own question to the 700 Club under that name, monitor it, and if one of these gets on, I hope that we'll hear about it, and it would really be proof that that at least it's possible that these questions are a goof.
Yeah, definitely.
A young boy is protesting that North Carolina church, which has said, until there is marriage equality, they won't do marriages of any kind, be they gay or straight. This is very, very disturbing video. This is a kid who appears to be, I think he's about 11 years old. And he decided to go and stand right outside the Green Street United Methodist Church in North Carolina after they took this pledge to support equality. And the boy is not identified. This was first reported by our good friend Jeremy Hooper from the Good As You blog. And he stood in front of the Winston-Salem Church on Easter Sunday with a placard that read, Jesus must be your Lord, or he will not be your Savior. This is disturbing stuff. I wouldn't want any kid seeing this. So I'm issuing a Bill O'Reilly type warning that you may want to get the kids out of the room. And let's take a look at the video, Lewis. Incredible.
It's time to get right with God. It's time to stop sinning and follow Jesus Christ. And the Bible says today is the day of salvation. Today is the day for you to get born again. You still have that chance to repent, to stop your sinning, to quit approving the gay people.
And this just went on and on and on, and this little kid standing out there. So question one is, where did he get these ideas, right? Because you can't come up with this stuff on your own. Somewhere he got it. My initial instinct is always to look at the parents. We don't know this particular case.
Yeah, do we think he made that sign too?
Right. He has very good printing skills.
Yeah.
He's doing huge protest signs at a high school level, even though he's only 11 years old.
Something not right about this.
Is this the result of child abuse? I mean, he seems to have, based on what he's saying, an irrational fear of imaginary things, which came from somewhere. And if it did come from his parents, is that not child abuse of some kind? The causing of your kid to have irrational fear?
Yeah, well, I think I've said before, maybe I haven't, that I believe the indoctrinating your children with this type of thing is definitely a form of mental abuse.
This reminds me a little bit, Natan, of Jonathan Crone, the CPAC whiz kid who gave that crazy conservative speech at CPAC a few years ago. And then now he's basically said, I didn't know what I was talking about. I'm going to NYU or Columbia, something like that. And he's more or less a moderate liberal type kid. Is it possible in 10 years this kid will look back and realize what an uninformed individual, immature individual he was, and maybe we'll hear about how he's happy with his wonderful boyfriend who fortunately now he can marry? Is that possible?
I hope so. And it also reminds me of Borat when he agrees with that redneck about wanting to like lynch gay people, but he doesn't even know that he's gay too. Like,
right.
He doesn't even know what it is, but he's just against it.
What's better for kids, Lewis, at this age? Playing soccer, helping your mom or dad with a project around the house like gardening or painting the cabinets, or preaching religious zealotry outside of a church with huge protest signs?
That would be playing video games.
Really, for anybody concerned about video games, I would much prefer my kid to be playing video games and to have, a level 84 wizard in World of Warcraft or whatever it is, than to be doing this.
Yes, your child is definitely better off shooting tons of people in Call of Duty than doing this. This is the harmful stuff.
Remember when last month Senator Rob Portman, Republican from Ohio, came out for marriage equality, and he said in great part the change of his point of view was a result of his son coming out to him a couple of years ago. You remember that story?
Oh, yeah.
Well, we now have, as reported by Think Progress, an example of a Republican congressman who doesn't care that his son is gay. He is opposed to his own son's marriage equality. We're talking about Republican from Arizona. This is Congressman Matt Salmon, who happens to be a Mormon. And he was not really moved to any kind of change or coming to light after his son came out to him. Let's take a look at a local news report of this story, Lewis.
Congressman Matt Salmon says his son is one of the most important people in his life, but in an upfront
It's
interview
already.
Here in the 3TV studios, he told us he's just not ready to support gay marriage. Here's political editor Dennis Welch.
I don't support the gay marriage.
But that doesn't mean Mr. Salmon
Let's
disavows.
stop it right there. He doesn't support the gay marriage. What is it with Republicans? George W. Bush talked about looking stuff up on the Google. The Congressman Salmon doesn't support the gay marriage. Which one? The gay marriage of who? What is he talking about?
I mean, trouble with English is just rampant in the Republican Party, I guess.
Is there a linguistic analysis, Natan, to why he may be? Is there something implicit in saying the gay marriage?
I don't know. I guess it's to illustrate that it's the whole institution as such. Now, I mean, I guess it's better than saying a gay marriage. I'm against a gay marriage. It is better than that, right?
He's against the concept.
It's kind of like putting an S on the end of things where it doesn't belong.
Yeah.
Kind of the same category.
That's trues. Okay, let's continue.
Was his son?
My son is by far one of the most important people in my life. I love him more than I can say.
In a candid interview with 3TV, the Republican congressman talked about his relationship with his son and why he still believes marriage should only be between one man and one woman.
I'm just not there as far as believing in my heart that we should change 2,000 years of social policy in favor of a redefinition of the family. I'm not there.
Throughout his
political... So, again, there's so much nonsense in there. First of all, this 2,000 years thing. 2,000 years, first of all, is really not that much when you think about the course of human history. But putting that aside for a second, let's say it was, and it was really significant, 2,000 years. We had slavery as an accepted social policy for thousands of years. Would the argument have been valid to say, well, this has been part of our social policy for thousands of years. We can't possibly change slavery. It doesn't matter. Nothing else matters other than the fact that we've had it for a while.
And it's social policy. Social policy.
Right.
Right? I mean, there's the problem right there.
Let's look at his own church. He's a Mormon. The Mormon church changed social policy when it got rid of polygamy. Now, a lot of it was because they were starting to get prosecuted. Mitt Romney's grandfather had to run to Mexico to have multiple wives. Fair enough. But they were still able to change something that had been social policy for a really long time. I don't understand how that's even really an argument. Stating that something has been the case for a while is not an argument, but somehow it's considered one.
Right. And, of course, what we're really talking about is legal policy.
Right, absolutely.
So this is the problem with the religious conservatives, right?
Disturbing, and I can't even imagine the turmoil, and I feel bad that must be happening within this family. I mean, I can't imagine a situation that is this horrible, Natan, where publicly your dad is saying, first of all, using lifestyle is the term that he's using, and he's going out and basically saying that the legal system should prevent you from doing something that other people are able to do.
Right. Also, the other sort of ridiculous idea about that whole, 2,000 years of social policy is that, there's been only maybe 10 years of legal gay marriage in the world, but there have been gay couples for thousands of years, probably more than 2,000 years. So it's not a new institution. What's new is that we're not discriminating against them.
Absolutely. That's the idea that somewhere deep in there, when we hear about these arguments of antiquity, is the implication that gay people also are a new thing.
Right. Along with the social policy of having marriage be between a man and a woman comes the social policy of the persecution of gays.
Exactly. They seem to go hand in hand.
Yeah.
On today's bonus show, we will talk about cardboard police officers. We'll also talk about a strip club, Jesus, and a billboard. 2 of 3 of those are some of Lewis's favorite things. Which 2? I don't know. We'll have to see. And we'll also talk about the increasing diagnosis of ADHD among children. Is it overdiagnosis? Is the definition changing? Are the goalposts moving? Is it a pharmaceutical-driven thing? What's that all about? You've got to get the bonus show. davidpakman.com/membership. Sign up today, and we'll be back with plenty more after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Our membership program is made possible in part by liberalbias.com. Cutting-edge research shows that President Obama causes lightning, cats, and suicide. Find out more at the unbiased website, liberalbias.com. Today's new member of the day is Gregory Woodham. Gregory, thank you, and thank you to all David Pakman Show members for their support. Lewis, anything you want to add?
No, I'll second that.
All right. Today in show history, what were we talking about years ago on the show? This is so funny. 1 year ago today, we were talking about Rick Santorum in the midst of his presidential campaign, chastising a little kid for using a pink bowling ball. Man, I'm glad that guy didn't win.
Classic, yeah.
He
never stood a chance.
He didn't have a chance, right? At one point, it looked like maybe he did when he was surging. He was surging from behind.
Yeah.
2 years ago today, Tea Party Congressman Sean Duffy was complaining about having to live on $174,000 a year, his congressional salary. I felt really bad for him back then, Lewis, and I still feel really, really bad for him.
Tough times.
And 4 years ago today, Fox News hosted a former mobster to do a segment comparing Democrats with the mafia. Fair and balanced news at its absolute best.
Fair and balanced all the way.
What a joke. It's so funny to look back at some of these stories. And it's like at the time, like for example, the Pat Robertson story today. Okay, yeah, we're in the midst of a lot of Pat Robertson stories. And he says God only does miracles for people in Africa because they're less educated, blah, blah, blah. In a year or two, when we look back at that story, it's completely absurd. I mean, it's a man who clearly is deeply, deeply troubled.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Lewis.
Yeah.
Remember when speaking of losers, remember when Mitt Romney called Tesla a loser during the 2012 presidential debates? If you don't know about Tesla, Tesla is a Tesla Motor Company is a company that is developing electric vehicles. And the Department of Energy loaned Tesla a bunch of money. And Mitt Romney listed Tesla among a bunch of companies during the 2012 presidential debates as one of the losers that President Obama picked to give money to. This is the original clip back from the debates. Just to refresh your memory, Lewis.
You provided $90 billion in breaks to the green energy world. Now, I like green energy as well.
Right.
But that's about 50 years worth of what oil and gas receives. And you say Exxon and Mobil. Actually, this $2.8 billion goes largely to small companies, to drilling operators and so forth. But, you know, if we get that tax rate from 35% down to 25%, well, that $2.8 billion is on the table. Of course it's on the table. That's probably not going to survive if you get that rate down to 25%. But don't forget, you put $90 billion, like 50 years worth of breaks into solar and wind, to Solyndra and Fisker and Tesla and Enter1. I mean,
yeah, so there it is, those losers. And actually, let's just play the last line, because I think the last line is important.
I had a friend who said you don't just pick the winners and losers, you pick the losers.
There it is. Mr. President, you pick the losers like Tesla. Well, we just got some interesting information from Tesla today. The Daily Jolt is reporting 6 months after Mitt Romney called the Department of Energy's loan to Tesla Motor Company a loser, Tesla has announced it posts its first ever profit in the first quarter of 2013 and expects to pay back its loan to the Department of Energy 5 years ahead of schedule. Meanwhile, Tesla's Model S was unanimously voted Motor Trend's Car of the Year in November of 2012. So Mitt Romney loses the 2012 election, says Tesla's a loser, says President Obama picks losers, but Tesla appears to be on the path to winning pretty big.
Right. This is kind of like the same mentality behind people criticizing some of the bailouts, like with AIG.
Which has now been actually profitable for the government.
Right.
Yeah. Now, it is true that they're not all profitable, and Mitt Romney could have been vindicated on this, but it really just shows how you can be wrong on everything, and almost half the country still votes for you. And probably close to that. I mean, if the election were held today, if we had a re-election, if we just ran it back, what percentage of the voters do you think, Natan, would vote for Mitt Romney again?
You mean if we hadn't had the election previously?
If we did, but now we said, you know what, we've got another chance. Let's do the election again. It's Obama-Romney. We're doing it today.
Oh, I see. I think that Obama would win by an even larger margin because people like a winner.
Right, but Romney would still get, what, 40%?
Probably about 47.
I'd say 45%.
Yeah, I mean, he would still get close to half the electorate, even after being wrong on everything retroactively. It's just amazing that still half the country would vote for the guy.
Our voters just don't educate themselves.
Exxon Mobil. Exxon has an oil spill in an Arkansas neighborhood. I've got video of it to show you in a second. Andrew, the liberal truck driver from Arkansas, contacted me about this and said, you know what? We're not all uninformed clowns down here in Arkansas. I'm a liberal truck driver, and I'm concerned about this. And this happened hours after Republicans called the Keystone XL pipeline a no-brainer that passes environmental muster. ExxonMobil spilled, and I say this number, it's probably way more, but at least 10,000 barrels of crude oil in a residential neighborhood. And if you ever wonder what it looks like to see 10,000 barrels of crude oil rolling down the streets of your suburban subdivision, you don't have to wonder anymore because we now have the video. Let's take a look at this, Lewis. This is a guy driving around. It's basically what you would imagine, except you would be used to seeing it in kind of like apocalyptic science fiction movies. Take a look.
So that is a pipeline that is busted and is flooded the neighborhood and is going all the way to the drain at the end of the street. Luckily, our house is here, which is seemingly unaffected, but the smell is unbelievable. I mean, look.
And then this is really the shot. There's a driveway here where the oil is just overflowing everywhere. It's all over a basketball hoop and the house and the landscaping. Dead birds have been found covered in oil. It's a total disaster. This is Exxon's Pegasus pipeline, which ruptured over the weekend. And so far, 22 homes in Mayflower, Arkansas have been evacuated. It's not clear when any of those people will be able to come back. Part of the pipeline actually goes through a water source, Lake Mamel, which provides drinking water to nearly 400,000 residents in central Arkansas. Officials claim they were able to stop the flow before it reached that far. Do we believe that? I don't know. As usual, Exxon is not being very forthcoming with the details here. When they were asked, well, what was the leak? They said, well, what's the term that they use? We've confronted, or we've encountered 10,000 barrels of oil, or maybe it's 12,000 barrels of oil, but it's just not clear really what the extent of it is. Even if you've only leaked or spilled 10 or 12,000 barrels of oil, that is still mixing in with water, et cetera, where you might have to collect 200,000 barrels of gallons of liquid. You just don't know what the extent will be. And we never hear from the companies. Remember, with Deepwater Horizon, within days of the leak being stopped, they had it all cleaned up. 75% of it was gone. A year later, there were huge oil slicks in the Gulf.
Right. Of course, they're going to pull the same type of thing that BP did. I mean, it's just their entire job right now is just PR, right? They need to make themselves not look as bad as they do.
Maybe the new argument is this for the oil spill problems that we're having. Do you realize how many jobs we're creating with these oil spills? We've got to bring out huge cleanup crews. We've got to bring out people to bring food and gas to the cleanup crews. We're employing so many people cleaning up the oil spills. Is that an idea that would work?
It's one that they will try to make work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this really isn't, Natan, about pipelines specifically. At least it shouldn't be. It should really be about, more broadly, the lack of sustainability that these types of fuels provide, combining that with the fact that they're just not good for the environment. We really should be moving so quickly towards alternative energy, and it's really not happening very fast.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer, but...
Yeah, speaking of no-brainers that pass the environmental muster, moving away from fossil fuels should be at the top of the list.
Right. I mean, we can become energy independent, according to some experts, by like 2020 or 2022, but it's going to involve, in the short term, a lot of oil and natural gas. So I don't know. There's pros and cons to doing that.
No question about it. But we just this status quo can't continue. Just putting more money in the pockets of the big oil companies until we're just out and the environment is in worse shape. How long are we going to wait, Lewis?
Good question. Probably
as long as there's profits.
Until the oil's about to run out.
Right. Facebook.com/David Pakman Show. Join us on Facebook, heading towards 20,000 likes. We'll take a break. Next, I will give you the update on our Indiegogo campaign. We will talk about mandatory gun ownership in Georgia and a lot more stuff. Stay with us.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
All right, we've got the Indiegogo campaign going. We are trying to raise $30,000 during the month of April to upgrade the entire David Pakman Show production to high definition. It involves a new TriCaster, a bunch of new cameras, a whole bunch of stuff, which is all outlined on the Indiegogo fundraiser page. So we had an awesome first day yesterday, Lewis. It helped in part by some early contributions that came in over the weekend. We started today, day 2 of the fundraiser, with $3,030 in, which is about 10%. So if we can continue this pace, and I don't know if we can because it includes some early donations, we would have this thing wrapped up in about 11 or 12 days. Now, that being said, about half of that was early contribution. So really, we might be able to get this thing wrapped up by April 20th, which would be fantastic.
That would be fine, yeah.
However, we need people to keep contributing $5, $10, $2,500, whatever the case may be. Please log on to our Indiegogo fundraiser page. Even if you can't contribute, share the page. Use the Facebook and Twitter buttons there. That will help push the fundraiser to the front of the Indiegogo website. How do you find it? Very easy. Go to our website, davidpakman.com. At the top of the website, bright green banner says, check out our Indiegogo fundraiser. You can't miss it, Lewis. Bright green is a very, very visible color.
Yeah, it's right there.
Exactly. davidpakman.com. Click on the bright green banner. Anything you can contribute is greatly appreciated. We've put together a bunch of great prize packages and different things that we're going to be doing. You can check them all out, a number of different levels. It doesn't matter if you can only contribute $5. It's worth it. We got a bunch of $5 contributions overnight, Lewis. Any amount is appreciated. And a lot of people throwing $100 and $250 at this thing. Very much appreciated.
Good stuff, yeah.
So that's what's going on. We will give you an update tomorrow of where we are. 3030 is where we started today. Would be great to be at 4,000 come tomorrow. That would be huge.
Yes.
A Georgia town, Nelson, Georgia, has decided, well, instead of passing gun control, we're going to put together a mandatory gun ownership law for heads of household, and they've passed it. Ross Story is reporting on this. The town of Nelson, Georgia has followed through with a proposal which would require residents to own a gun, and it was voted on unanimously by the city council. They said, absolutely, we want this. WGCL-TV reported that this would apply only to heads of household. There, of course, would be some exceptions if you're disabled, if you're mentally ill, if you object to owning a gun for religious reasons. What if you object to owning a gun because you just don't feel like you need one and you're more likely to end up shooting yourself or someone you love instead of an intruder? Is that a fair reason not to have a gun? I don't know if that's included here.
Doesn't sound like it is, no. I mean, if you don't want a gun in your home, I think that you should be allowed not to have a gun in your home.
So a couple of caveats happening here. Number one is that this is a non-binding type of declaration, which means that it's not really going to be enforced in any kind of serious way, which to me is a little bit ridiculous because it proves that this is really just posturing. It is meant that their argument is, hey, if I hear that they've passed this legislation, that'll make me less likely to break into someone's house, but we're not really going to enforce it, which really just confirms this is a huge waste of time. They talked to the police chief, and the police chief is also the only police officer. There's one police officer here. Let's see what he had to say, Lewis. I can only imagine it is brilliant. Take a listen.
Stephanie, the police chief here is a one-man police force, and he likes how the vote went here tonight,
yeah, he likes it.
saying that he hopes it will make the city even safer.
Yeah.
It's been a little over 5 years, the last one we had.
Despite not having a murder in more than 5 years, Nelson's only cop still likes having the new firearms law. Chief Heath Mitchell says it's not the residents he's concerned about. The bulk of the city's crime comes from outsiders.
Yeah.
They're going to think twice before they come into Nelson and cause harm or break in or commit a theft, any type of criminal activity. I know I would if I was a bad guy.
Yeah, there you go. So he loves it. The one police officer in the town really, really likes this. So it's really funny because is anybody else missing the hypocrisy about government mandates here? Mandates that, for example, say people need health care and we're already paying for everybody's health care through the emergency room. So we're going to put together a mandate which will say everybody must be covered. We're going to provide subsidies for that, but it's a government mandate. Whoa, unconstitutional, even though the Supreme Court already said it's fine. And we're overreaching here. This could save the life of my child, and that's really too much government intrusion. However, mandating that you need to do something which inevitably will lead to accidental shootings, nobody has a problem with the government mandating that.
No, at least not in Georgia.
No.
I mean, I wonder if Nelson is subsidizing gun ownership, right? What if you can't afford a gun? Will the town help you acquire one?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
And by the way, the police chief says bad guys. What does that even mean? Bad guys. Is that a term that...
Yeah. Well, you know, it's good guys versus bad guys.
Right. Because the only thing that stops a good guy with a gun... Oh, no, I'm sorry. Wait, the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with an even bigger gun. The only thing that stops a bad tyrannical government would be a good... people with guns.
Right.
To fight off tanks.
Yes.
Got it. Very, very good. Perfect sense. I like this.
I wonder what's going to happen when this... at a routine traffic stop here, the driver just turns around and starts shooting at this sheriff.
I think nothing's going to happen as a result of this, other than maybe accidental shootings.
Probably.
WAFF.com is reporting that an immigrant from Vietnam destroyed some flags, and conservatives are calling, of course, for his deportation. This is in Huntsville, Alabama, where police arrested a 44-year-old. His name is Min Pham. They say that he cut down a bunch of flags from several businesses and also from a cemetery. He's been charged with 3 things: criminal mischief, desecration of the flag, and resisting arrest. Now, he happens to be from Vietnam, according to investigators, and they say this was all done in protest of the war. Which war? We haven't heard. That's okay. Some of the comments on the WAFF.com website and on this story on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube are really incredible. And I don't know if this is flag-driven or immigration-driven. In other words, are conservatives, and I'll read some of the comments to you, are conservatives particularly angry with this guy because it was the flag or because he's an immigrant? I'm not really sure. So some of the comments: kick him out of the country. This is not freedom of speech when he destroys something that doesn't belong to him. And I say if he hates it here so bad that he has to cut down the flag, he needs to be returned to Vietnam. So what do you guys think? Is this because the guy is an immigrant, or is it because he was doing something to a flag? What's irritating people more?
The flag is always a touchy thing. That, I think, adds to it, but I think it's mostly because he's an immigrant.
Natan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think if he was an American citizen, he would have no place to be sent back to. I mean, I think that it's part of, especially now in the context of the whole immigration overhaul push.
Yeah.
There's a lot of xenophobia to go around.
Well, I was thinking about that. Some people are against some of the immigration reforms, particularly conservatives, because they say they're very arbitrary in nature. In other words, you're kind of handpicking. Some people who came here illegally are going to be allowed to stay and given benefits, but some people aren't. It's very, very arbitrary. And I would say, isn't it arbitrary to say that this guy should be deported because it was a flag in particular? That to me seems very, very arbitrary.
Yeah. I mean, of course, if this were an American citizen, I think these people would be calling for jail time because it's just malicious destruction of property, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely the immigrant factor is at play here.
Conservatives have a different, speaking of arbitrary, if you're an immigrant, you have a completely different set of rules that you have to live by, because you didn't happen to be born here.
If you're an immigrant that doesn't look like he might have been born here, he or she might have been born here, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, clearly, this does not look like someone who might have immigrated here from Poland or Russia.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break. I want to talk about some incredible comments about poverty from the Fox News channel. We've got some voicemails to get to and a few other things. Glad you're with us today. DavidPakman.com/membership to sign up. We'll see you back here in a couple minutes.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Hey, if you've never heard of Fox News contributor Charles Payne, you're probably way better off than people who have had to watch his videos. But I need to talk about him because of an incredible story from Fox News. This was on Fox News' Cavuto on Business. It's a Saturday show hosted by Neil Cavuto, who does a weekly, or a daily show rather. He does one on Fox News, and I think he does a daily show on Fox Business as well. He's keeping pretty busy over there, Lewis.
Unfortunately.
He says it sometimes gets a little comfortable to be in poverty. Ah, yes, that, I don't even know what to call it, not funny, but ridiculous notion that people sometimes just like being poor because it's just so comfortable. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Charles Payne was that once you get them, it's hard to stop them. So the benefit is there, and it's hard to take the benefit away. And the more people are getting them, then it just exponentially grows.
Yeah, well, there's absolutely no doubt about that, that there's this idea that, you know, between the food stamps and the welfare and the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit and the local programs, you know, it gets a little comfortable to be in poverty, you know. And listen, I know people are going to, listen, I've lived it firsthand. I've seen where people don't go to work because they get everything paid for them. The incentive is not there.
Right. So people just get really comfortable living on poverty. So we need to, first of all, there's just a lot to unpack here. First of all, we need to put aside the blatant disregard for the realities of poverty, of living in poverty. He doesn't even have the facts right if we put aside that. For example, he talks about the earned income tax credit. What are the first two words in there, Lewis?
Earned income.
Right, which means what?
That means they need to be earning income.
Exactly. And how do you do that?
By working.
Right. So those lazy, comfortable, poor people qualifying for earned income tax credits by working. Interesting. And I looked up the numbers. The earned income tax credit, you have to have, in order to qualify for it, you have to have, if you have one qualifying child, you could make up to $36,920 or $442,000 a year if you filing jointly if you're married. and still qualify. So you could be making a full-time income working very, very hard. You would still qualify for the earned income tax credit. So if you're going to do your normal Fox News shtick of talking about how lazy anybody who's receiving any kind of government benefit is, at least have your facts right. That's the least we could ask for.
Facts? Who needs them?
Yeah, facts have a liberal bias, apparently. Yeah. Despicable stuff. Former Vogue editor is saying that sometimes models eat paper. Paper. This is longtime Vogue Australia editor Kirsty Clements, and she has this book out. It's being called The Tell-All, called The Vogue Factor. And she talks about how models, of course, as we know, need to maintain themselves very, very skinny. They starve themselves. She went on shoots where she saw a model not eat a single meal for 3 days during a shoot. But then she said, this is the craziest thing, that sometimes models will eat tissues in order to feel full without actually having meals. This sounds like one of those ridiculous accusations North Korea would make in one of these propaganda videos, but it appears to be coming from a reliable source and that this is true.
I'm not surprised by this.
I would say some people, when they hear about this and they see the skinny nature of these models, they say, let them do whatever they want. If they want to kill themselves by not eating, let them do it. The problem is that because these images have such a central role in society, kids see it, people develop unrealistic expectations of what they should look like. It leads to eating disorders. It's affecting people outside of the modeling community. That's really, I think, the concern why we need to look at it beyond just, hey, let them do whatever they want.
Yeah, I agree. This is just pretty disturbing.
You once ate paper, but it wasn't because of any reason like this. It was just something because you were bored in school.
Yeah. You got to pass the time somehow.
All right, so there it is, models eating tissues. There you go. I actually, you know what? The other day I accidentally ate paper. This is so embarrassing. You know how sometimes...
You ate like a piece of candy that had a wrapper?
No. You know how when you get like sliced cheese, sometimes there is like a piece of wax paper between the slices and sometimes there isn't. I made a sandwich and it was the last slice and I assumed that there was no piece of paper on the bottom. Like, why would you need one on the bottom? There was. I put it in a sandwich. I take a bite and it just feels weird. And I look in, and I've been eating paper for like 5 minutes.
Huh? How did that work out? Did you feel sick or anything?
Nope, felt fine. It was actually pretty good, I must say. It gave it kind of like a gritty, gritty texture.
You may be onto something here.
Yeah, putting a little paper in there. It's pretty good. Let's go to some voicemails. 219-2-DAVID-P. Here's a voicemail about our McDonald's story yesterday.
Hi, David. Love your show. Just wanted to comment on the McDonald's story in your April 1st podcast. You mentioned why would anybody buy apple slices or oatmeal from a McDonald's? And I would like to bring up food deserts. Here in the south side of Chicago, there are vast areas where people reside where there are no supermarkets within walking distance. And for low-income families, often their only option is to eat from convenience stores, liquor stores, and fast food restaurants.
This is a good point, and we missed it, and it's a very good point. There is sometimes structural classism or racism that is in the geography of how things are laid out, and that is absolutely a factor. Hey, if that's the case and you are getting the apple slices at McDonald's, good for you. I think that's actually a good thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's too bad if you have no choice, but McDonald's needs to do even more in that case.
And on the Boy Scouts and accepting gay people.
Hi, guys. This is Corey Robert Hall. I'm here in Montana, Bozeman, Montana. I am 19 years old. I am calling about a segment you guys did on March 13th of 2013. It's about the Boy Scouts and their ban on gay marriage, or not gay marriage, allowing gay members into the organization. And I just want to let you guys know that there are plenty of us Scouters out there who are totally for it, you know. I think it's, once again, it's that older generation in Scouts who's kind of holding this back, you know, just like it's the older generation holding gay marriage back.
Totally agree. Not everybody who is involved with the Boy Scouts is anti-gay, but structurally, the policy of the organization, disturbing. Very, very disturbing. That's it for today. We'll see you tomorrow. Please contribute to our Indiegogo fundraiser, become a member, all that good stuff. We'll be back here tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.